Okay, folks, I think we're going to go ahead and get started. First of all, welcome to our webinar event. This is invitation only to trust officers throughout the country, sponsored by PolicyCheck and TFP Brokerage. This is the first in a series of events that will be focused on issues that we see in the marketplace pertaining to life insurance and advice and tools that we can provide to you to help you successfully manage the insurance that you have oversight on. Today's topic is on term life insurance. My name is Mike Smith. I'm president of TFP Brokerage. And later on in the presentation, you'll meet Steve Hutchison, who is president and the founder of PolicyCheck. Let's go, since we have a limited amount of time, let's go ahead and get started. So let's start with what is the purpose of an ILET. Virtually every ILET that I've ever come in contact with has been the primary purpose of those ILETs was to provide liquidity at the grantor's death. So it's a long-term strategy that is going to provide funds, death benefit funds, to the trust for the purposes of paying the state taxes or paying off debt or state equalization or whatever it may be as the primary objective. Which brings us to term insurance in ILETs. You know, what is the role of term insurance in an ILET, and is it appropriate? And frankly, we really don't think it is a tool that is functional in an ILET, given that it's a short-term instrument in a vehicle that's a long-term strategy. So, I mean, there is an advantage to term insurance initially because it is inexpensive, so it does allow you to secure the amount of coverage that you'd like until, or that the grantor would like to secure until they can make a decision or a determination as to what the long-term strategy, insurance strategy will be. But that's really about the only function that I can see that term insurance plays in an ILET. In fact, if you look at Forbes magazine did a study and they said that less than 5% of all term policies will actually pay off to death of the insured. And of course, the shorter the duration of the term policy, the lower that probability. So what are the primary problems we see with term insurance in ILETs? Number one is typically term insurance is purchased right off a spreadsheet according to price. We see a lot of term policies expire at the end of the level term period, most of the time with no conversion option. We see term conversions rarely considered on the initial purchase, and we're going to talk about that in a minute. We see a lot of term insurance expiring with no attention to life settlement or secondary market, which is aggressive in today's marketplace. And overall, we see a lack of attention to periodic reviews of the term insurance to see that it actually, there's some strategy in place so that it actually pays off at the grantor's death. So we do have a couple of sources of guidance on what a fiduciary's responsibility is in an ILET. The first one here is from the OCC in the handbook referenced above, states that the bank fiduciaries are responsible for protecting and managing the policy for the beneficiaries for the life of the grantor. And that a bank fiduciary must understand the policy that they accept, and if they don't understand it, they should retain a third-party advisor to help them prudently manage the asset. They suggest that bank fiduciaries conduct annual reviews, just like in investment reviews, and the review should consider the health of the carrier as well as whether the policy is performing as illustrated and whether replacement should be considered. So that's OCC's guidelines. Furthermore, we had a recent court case out in Nebraska overturned in lower court in Rayford versus Meyer and ruled in favor of the plaintiffs, which happened to be the beneficiaries of an ILET. Now, in this case, if you read the notes, you'll see that it appears this trustee was fairly negligent in his activities, but it does give us some direction as to what that court sees as the responsibilities of an ILET trustee. Again, back to the first bullet point, explain the provisions of the trust and who will be responsible for monitoring the policies. Act in good faith in the best interest of the beneficiaries, and keep the beneficiaries fully informed so they can protect their interests. So I think that does give us some backdrop as to how an appropriate approach is to take with term insurance. And what does it tell us? Well, it tells us we need to protect, manage, and monitor the policies in the interest of the beneficiaries, understand the policy and how it works, or retain a third party to help you. And then the review should evaluate the financial health of the carrier, whether the policy is performing, whether replacement should be considered, and then finally keep beneficiaries informed at all times on policy performance so they can protect their interests. Let's take a look at just one aspect of term insurance to give you kind of an idea of some of the decisions that play into this role of yours as an ILET trustee. We did a recent study of 20 major life insurance carriers recently pertaining to their conversion options. 6 of those carriers contractually allow in the policy, in writing, conversion to any product they sell at the time of the conversion. That is obviously the most favorable conversion privilege that you would like to enjoy in a policy, particularly if you're trying to get the policy out to a term policy out to the mortality or past the mortality of the insured. 7 of the carriers currently allow the conversion of any product they sell, but the policy states the carrier can limit it to specific products in the future. And that is the trend of carriers, and we do believe that will continue. So we believe that's a much less favorable provision than the first one we referenced. And then finally, 7 of those carriers limit conversion to a specific product. And those products that we evaluated with those 7 carriers were not competitive products when compared to the open marketplace. And we believe that's by design. So conversion option, if you're managing term insurance in an ILET, the conversion options, and the goal is to get that policy out to life expectancy, then the conversion options are pretty critical to that decision. Okay, so at this point, I'm going to turn the presentation over to Steve Hutchinson. Steve, take it away.
Hey, thanks a lot, Mike. Okay, what we did here is we did several case studies that were pretty interesting as it relates to these term insurance policies. And initially what we have found is that most trustees, when they're looking at term policies, and in fact the general public and agent population at large, they take a look at the term policy, and it's a commodity. So the lowest cost term is always the best decision in the mind of most people when they're looking at it. In other words, a 10-year term, if one's $100 and another one's $150, then the $100 one is always a better purchase than the $150 term. And that could be true if the policy is being studied in a vacuum where you only need 10 years of coverage. But in doing a deep dive on a term policy, we found some pretty interesting differences in the way these contracts are set up, as Mike was discussing the various conversion options. But here's a case study on an American General policy that was a 15-year term on a male age 67 for $1.25 million. So what we did is we first analyzed, and these steps that we're taking here are part of your 9-step process that we recommend you as a trustee use when evaluating a term policy. But the first number that we dug out of the analysis is that the current level premium is $13,438, and that's going to lapse on the 67-year-old basically in 4 years at age 71. And doing a quick survival probability on that particular scenario shows that he has a 96% chance of surviving that current level premium period. So from a success point for the trust or for the beneficiaries, which is where your responsibility lies, there's essentially a 96% chance that if $13,438 is the premium needed to keep everybody happy, there's a 96% chance that this policy is going to need to go to some other type of structure or another level or be replaced in some format. So that leads to the next question is, if we don't do anything, we pay the premium through age 71, and this policy begins renewing at age 71, at that point it becomes an annually renewable term, which most term policies do at the conclusion of the term period. So the premium picks back up at $84,813 at age 71. So that's kind of an ugly scenario, and the scenario gets a little bit uglier every year you wait. So it's really important as a trustee when you have somebody that's wanting to put a term policy inside of their ILET, you have to be very clear as to what it is they're trying to accomplish with this, because these contracts can paint somebody into a corner where they don't have very many options left at the end of the day, and somebody could eventually be forced to have to pay renewal premium in a worst case health change. So the convert now premium is the next thing that we analyze. The convert now premium shows that it would take $44,250 to convert this policy, and this particular contract only had one conversion option. So $44,250 would convert the policy to a permanent policy without any evidence of insurability right now. Then the last thing that we analyze is what would happen if we went to the marketplace and, assuming the same health as they had when they took out the original term policy, what would it cost to convert to a permanent policy outside of the conversion options made available by American General. And we found that we could almost cut the premium in half out there by going into the competitive marketplace. So it tells us a couple things. One, that we don't want to hold this policy until we're forced into paying a renewal premium. And two, if we are going to want a permanent structure, that it'd be a lot better to look at at the purchase options and the conversion options right now, and so you have a complete understanding of what the cost factors are relative to that. The next question I have, this is kind of a mental question. Obviously, we don't have everybody turned on here, but if we have 3 policies on a male age 65, and we were to go quote from a quote engine, such as one of the major select quotes, and just quote out term premiums, and the first premium came in, Genworth, the annual premium is $4,400. Lincoln, the annual premium is $4,510, and John Hancock is $4,540. Which one of these would be the best deal for a 10-year term? The obvious answer would be obviously the Genworth, because the annual premium is $4,400. But when you dig down into the specific options that are available, the Genworth is only convertible to a specific expensive product up to the age of 75, meaning that, although the term pays what it says it's going to pay, we actually refer to it kind of as junk term, because it's easy on the way in and very difficult on the way out, because they paint you into a corner and you have very little options on the conversion. The Lincoln, the premium is a little bit more expensive than the Genworth, but the language in the conversion option states that it's currently convertible to any product, but can be limited to certain products. So their practice is that you can convert to any product, but they contractually have the option of deciding or limiting those products if they want. So it's kind of at the carrier's option. They're kind of playing good guy, but they could change that language in the future. But that's better language than the Genworth. The John Hancock is actually the best policy for the trust in this particular instance. The annual premium is $4,540, so it's the most expensive, but the language specifically gives you the right to any product that the company has for sale at the time of conversion up to age 75. So that's what we call a very clean term policy with the correct policy conversion language. And so as part of your checklist, you want to be completely clear on the language and the policy and what that means. And you want to have all these illustrations ran in advance so you can demonstrate to your grantor, to the beneficiaries, that you're in control of this asset that is life insurance on behalf of the beneficiaries. The next question, as it relates to policy suitability, we find that when we analyze policies on a general basis, 40% or more policies are popping up at risk. And the reason these policies are popping up risk, and I'm going back to general policy suitability, including universal life and all types of policies, is because of the long-term low interest rates. Policies are running out of money sooner rather than later, and we're running into a situation where the lapse rate is increasing on an annual basis, and there's well over $100 billion of life insurance lapsing every year on seniors over the age of 65, which includes most of the people that are grantors of trust. So here's another question for you. We have insured number 1, and both exactly the same policy, and insured number 2. The difference is insured number 1 is age 60, and his policy, based on the current premium of $8,000 a year and the cash value that's in the contract, is going to lapse at age 90. And as you can see, under the policy funding, there's a 40% chance that a 60-year-old will survive that lapse date of age 90. So that's insured number one. Insured number two is age 70, so 10 years older, and it's a $8,000 annual premium, so same premium, but the policy is scheduled to lapse at age 80, and there's an 83% chance that the insured is going to survive that lapse probability. Okay, so ask yourself, if these two policies were in your grouping of policies with your institution, which one would go to the top of the list to be handled in an expedient fashion? And most people probably say, well, insured number two, because the policy is going to lapse in 10 years. It's an immediate danger of lapse, so it's a department priority. You could immediately increase the funding, get to the beneficiaries, the grantor increase the funding, so this policy reaches contract maturity age. You could possibly reduce the face amount so that the current funding works at $8,000 a year. You could potentially replace the policy if it's not competitive, so you could get a hold of the insurance agent and have them look at different replacement options. You may want to immediately order more illustrations, but the bottom line, you're going to need to invest some time and energy in figuring out what to do with insured number two. But wait just a second here. Upon further investigation and doing a complete policy suitability that includes updating mortality on the client, we find out that insured number two, one, has congestive heart failure. Both parents and brother died of heart failure before age 60. They are on oxygen, have severe breathing issues complicated by weight, and has had 2 serious strokes this year, and the family is reviewing hospice options. So in light of this new information, all of a sudden insured number two is not the policy at risk, and actually insured number one has a much greater risk of a policy lapse or an issue where the contract itself has to be dealt with, not policy number two. So the lesson is that life insurance, there's 2 sides to the life insurance format for a trust. The first side is the insurance policy itself, which is, you know, the contract, the premium, the interest rates, all the different things that we feel like we're managing. But for it to be properly managed, it has to be in the correct context. And the correct context for life insurance is always that it's a mortality situation. So there's a big difference between average mortality and actual mortality. So the purpose of policy suitability is designed to evaluate policy options based upon actual mortality. So that's something that we feel is important, the trustees do relative to all the policies, and then it ends up sorting your policies in a manner where you're working on the policies that are actually at risk based upon all the factors, not just on the mathematical factors. So we have here the 9-point checklist for annual term life insurance review, and all the steps that we were discussing. What is the duration? In other words, how much or how long is that level term premium period on the current policy? What is going to be the renewal premium on that policy if you let the level term period expire? Understanding that conversion language, number 3. In other words, what can this term policy be converted to and under what conditions? And then requesting an illustration for conversion to a permanent policy at the current age, and then also requesting an illustration for conversion to a permanent policy that's allowed under the contract at the maximum allowable age. Then requesting an illustration for a new term policy with favorable conversion options today. So if they want to remain in a term policy, then it might be advisable that they select a term policy that gives them conversion options for the future for the benefit of those beneficiaries. Then request an illustration for a new permanent policy today, so you have a comparative against the conversion options on that term policy, and request an illustration to convert to a new term policy at maximum convertible age if they were to select the new term policy. So there's quite a bit there. There's quite a bit for you to think about. We're going to resend everybody that's on the WebEx. We're going to resend you the 9-point checklist. And this educational series is designed just for that, for education. I would like to note that PolicyCheck as its service completes all these steps that we're talking about as part of its process for the benefit of the trustees and the beneficiaries and trusts that they serve. But we are available as a resource for you to discuss any of these items on an individual basis. We'd be happy to help you out with any language that you're having confusion with, or if you need us to take a look at some conversion options for you on a particular policy, we're available for you as a resource, and we make ourselves available to the population of trustees basically on a, just basically on a free gratis basis. If you need us, we're here to discuss, we're here to help you. And next month, we're going to be doing another educational piece with a checklist for Universal Life. It's going to be on the 2nd of June, so it'll be the same day, Tuesday, same time, and we'll be sure to get everybody out an invite for that. But once again, I'd like to thank everybody for being on this call. If you have any questions, feel free to respond back to an email we send you. It's going to have your checklist on there. And I'd like to thank everybody again. And Mike, I'll turn it over to you if you have anything to say. Otherwise, have a great day.
There's our contact information down at the bottom of your screen. You will get the 9-point checklist, and we would very much appreciate you taking the survey so we can get a better idea of what you found helpful about this. And mostly what we're looking for is, if you found it helpful, how often would you like to see these, and what kind of duration would you like to see? So thank you so much for attending, and we look forward to seeing you in another event in the future. Take care.
Thanks, Mike.